Intellectually, we might believe we have made this progress, but our psyche can have a whole different story and it can manifest in weird ways. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Focus on me. Trying to keep it cash today in the little cozy corner of my office. You know, sometimes I think back to some of the videos I've made over the years, because it's been a long time. I've been making content for over a decade. And sometimes I just can't help but cringe, because it's like, who do I think I am? And it's like, I'm just a girl. I actually hate that saying. I hate that trend. Whatever it means, I hate it, because let me just tell you, being a girl is the best thing you could ever be. But the point I'm trying to make is we can only speak from our own experience and hope that others can learn from that instead of having to go through it all themselves. So that's kind of what this video is going to be. If I learn anything in 2023, it's that even when you feel like you have your shit together and you are on fire, you've changed a good few thought patterns, obstacles that you put there or your upbringing did, things can very quickly take a turn. When you think you've developed a great relationship with your inner demons, your thought patterns and your psyche, it can be quite humbling to suddenly, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if this is even making any sense. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here basically is that we can't know everything, and that's fine. I was probably on top of my game at the beginning of last year, and I can't believe it's been a year. 2023, when you go through something difficult, time just does something differently. It just acts differently. I mean, it's not, but like your brain perceives time differently when you go through some kind of like trauma or experience. Or 2023, basically things can take a turn and very quickly, and some people might find that empowering. I'm not even going to go into that right now, but basically our typical response as individuals, depending on our upbringing and lots of other things, can show up again regardless of all the inner work that we've done and all of the understanding we now have of ourselves. It's like, yes, I realize why I work that way now, but what can I do about it? And sometimes we just got to face our biggest demon to try and figure out where it came from and actually kill it, rather than simply understand it. Nip it in the bud, as it were. Intellectually, we might believe we have made this progress, but our psyche can have a whole different story and it can manifest in weird ways, like symptoms or aggression, anxiety, depression. When people don't understand why Susan is a certain way, she's getting stressed out about something, he's being aggressive. Nobody wants to be like that. That's nobody's choice. If it was handed to them in a platter, no one's going to say, I want to make my life really difficult by being aggressive all the time, triggered all the time, or upset all the time. Like, people are just trying to do the best given the circumstances that they have, but a lot of the time these are just simply manifestations of something in that person's life, their reality, bubbling up to the surface, and them not simply being able to recognize that and understand that and like work through that. And that's fine. This is not me getting again on my soapbox and saying we must learn to heal. It's like, healing's hard. All we can simply do is recognize when things are feeling a certain way, we're getting agitated by something, or we're falling back into our old ways, our old triggers, our old coping mechanisms. We can go on autopilot and just continue letting that run. We can also choose to have a little look and investigate further about what it might mean for us in relation to our lives. I think our emotions and our external reality is always going to reflect what's happening in here. We're constantly attracting. But I thought I would do just some possible signposts from your body that you might be needing a fresh start. And it doesn't have to be the beginning of the year for a fresh start, like to fancy a fresh start or to start on a fresh start. I think we kind of have our own little like inner seasons sometimes when things feel like they're flourishing, developing and changing, or when sometimes things feel dried up or they kind of feel like they're going backwards sometimes. When you feel like you've made some of the biggest steps in your life, like I'm talking like 20 steps forward in my mind, can very quickly become 40 steps back, which is a hard pill to swallow. The further up top you are, the harder the fall. But the way I like to see it is it's not always steps back in the same direction to where you came from. They can almost be like side steps back. You're not where you were, and you're not going to be where you were either. when you eventually make those 40 steps forward again, because you're from a different angle, you're seeing things from a different perspective, you've got different experience, you've got different knowledge and wisdom now, and lessons. And that kind of leads me to the first point: suddenly not feeling in control. Like, I'm assuming most of us watching this can relate to a time in their life when you felt on your A game and you just feel like a boss-ass bitch. And if you are just feeling super discouraged, like, I'm not capable, I can't cope, I'm not capable, suddenly problems that you've always kind of had in the past, like your own personal issues, your own personal demons, struggles, suddenly they feel like they're growing, swelling, it's expanding for some reason, it's becoming more of an issue. For me, I've always found like the concept of time very difficult, and this is something I'm working with my therapist, 2 therapists for. But I know something's not right and I need to make changes in my life when time feels like it's going really fast and I kind of feel like I'm suffocating. I believe that's also an age thing. I won't go into that in this video, but suddenly there's so much to do in so little time. But when you're in that moment, it's quite valuable to have a friend or a loved one remind you that it's not, giving you some grounded responses to what's going on in your brain. You need to air that stuff out so you can have someone be like, you do realize that's not the case. That's often, for me anyways, my body telling me it needs to get out. Like, it doesn't like how things are structured right now, my routine, my job, or the people I'm hanging out with, or something about my partner, or it could, like, the house could be a tip. And I need to throw things out, freshen up the rooms, and I don't realize it's manifesting in me crying over a project I have on my laptop for work, feeling like I'm incapable and it's too much and I can't get it done. Like, that's a weird feeling when one problem over here connects to a problem over there. Another one for me is hyperfixation. I've never been tested for ADHD and I don't want to be. I know everyone's testing for ADHD now, but I definitely have traits of someone with ADHD, but I don't care if I have it, that's a personal thing. Certain labels don't empower me, they just box me up and tell me that I can't be a certain thing, I can't ever do a certain thing. I don't see the point of that, that doesn't liberate me. But hyperfixation, so having like an obsession with something, or like just being sucked into something new in your life, which is fine from time to time because it's passion, it's energy, it's excitement, enthusiasm, and sometimes that's good from time to time. It keeps us feeling alive and can be actually very valuable when you're stuck in a rut or feeling super anxious. But sometimes you're unknowingly kind of choosing to focus on something else because you don't have control of everything around that. And your body's almost trying to distract you in a way and find something interesting, get excitement elsewhere when you're lacking it. Like, where are you lacking that feeling you get when you're focused on something in particular? Can you find that somewhere else? The next one is a little bit of a niche, and I don't know if many will relate to this, but I want to make an entire video on this topic because it is one of the most craziest things to ever happen to me. It links to the obsession thing, but it's your brain obsessing over a thought. So thought loops is the best term I can give to this feeling, but it's kind of when your brain hyperfixates on something you're scared of, like a fear or a theory. A lot of people my age tend to have existential crises, and that's kind of what I feel like I experienced last year massively, and it connected itself to other parts of my life and things that were going on. Thoughts around like age, time, death, like that's my own personal fears, and I was constantly like thinking about it, finishing thinking about it, and then my brain would just meet me at the beginning again, and I would just go through this loop. And the worst part about my one in particular is you can't fix that. I can't really actively do anything about that. Thought loops usually are solved by putting action into the thought that you're having, but what can I really do about the fact we're all gonna die? Like, that's just... But actually, ironically, if you have that very specific thought loop too, I now know that fixating on death and time and age is literally a sign of your body needing fresh start, change. It is like giving you something to motivate you to do something with that small time that you have left. To me, it felt like there was a record player and the thought was just like skipping and I just couldn't like get it to just move on. I was sick of it. It was probably sick of me and we're just sick of each other. But it can be a thought loop on anything. That ties in as well to the next sign, and that is boredom. Having boredom show up in your life in weird ways like that. When we have a lot of time to think, when we have a lot of time to ourselves. You might be someone who is a little bit of a hermit and you are a deep thinker. I've always been. Maybe it's because I find the time to. I'm someone who doesn't really like to be distracted all the time and busy all the time. But I think last year taught me there's a lot of benefit from being busy and being distracted by life, because your life should be exciting to you. And if it's not, if you're spending a lot of time feeling quite empty about how things are going and showing up, you're creating space and time to think yourself crazy. Like literally, that's how thought loops happen. But this point isn't about thought loops. This one is just about boredom in general. I was spending a lot of 2023 applying for jobs and waiting around. I couldn't put a lot of time and energy into video creation and YouTube because I didn't have the money to. Like, I needed to find money to pay the bills and rent. Otherwise, I mean, if it wasn't for Adam, I'd be on the freaking streets. So I felt a little bit lost, a little lost lamb, falling back onto my usual thoughts that I've always found difficult to accept. And when you're faced with that, and nothing else, it magnetizes it. So if you're magnetizing things, you're probably bored, essentially. There's something in your life that's stagnant, your routine's just the same and it's dry, it's not distracting. You need to feel something that makes you remember you're alive. And that sounds crazy, but in hindsight, I would have loved someone to just knock on my door, shake me silly and be like, we're going to Thorpe Park. Or we're gonna fly to a different country for a week. Again, my last one relates to the next one. Feeling drained. And if you think about the opposite of boredom, it's ultimate distraction. It's like awe, it's movement and passion and energy. So that can manifest into tiredness and weariness and just always feeling so drained. And you just wake up like, oh my god, I've had 9 hours sleep and I'm knackered. When you're struggling mentally, making your breakfast is tiring. It takes a lot more energy than someone who's mentally feeling fine. But secondly, it's just having like not much to want to get out of bed for, like nothing to look forward to, literally looking forward to. You might need to shake up your routine a little bit. Question your job situation. Is that actually what you want to do? What you're studying at school? Like, do you have the passion for that anymore? I just had to charge up the camera for a little bit, so that's why it's got dark now. In fact, I'm gonna close that because I always feel like with these lights on, anyone could literally see everything. Yeah, that could even translate to your partner not being someone who's giving you that kind of excitement that you crave in a partner. Like, there's so many different areas of your life this could be pointing towards. It's down to you really to figure out why you're feeling these kinds of ways, which sounds dead obvious, but when you're in the thick of that, you believe with your full heart and soul that it's this one thing over here that's annoying you, like getting into full rage about a pile of clothes that are on the chair or the socks that your partner's put on the floor rather than in the laundry bin, and you think that's making you angry, but you've seen someone once in your life probably having a meltdown about something over here when actually it's probably because of all of the stuff over here. On that note of looking forward to something, you've guessed it, my next one relates to the last one. Your relationship with the past has become a bit strange. For me, this is hard to know when I'm really doing this, like intensely doing this to the point where there's probably a problem, because I've always had a little bit of a nostalgic brain. Like, I've always mourned the present moment before it's even had time to leave. Because it does add a little bit of morbidity to everything. Hyper aware of the fact time is always passing and that our present moment will become the past one day. But essentially what I'm saying is, if you find yourself lost in daydreams about the past and the way things were, and you're romanticizing that and who you had there then and what you did then and how things looked and how things seemed, they were the same as what they are now. It's just a present moment behind you. So the fact you're romanticizing, your brain's trying to basically in a long-winded way tell you that what you have currently isn't as good as it can be. So maybe just looking at what you romanticize about the most is probably a good sign to tell you what it is you need a fresh start in. Similarly, if you find yourself never really looking forward, making plans, like seeing much of a future, if you don't find yourself visualizing, then you've probably lost touch with your goals and your values don't align with the current goals that you have, because you're not seeing an end goal, so there's no real objective in your life at the moment. Some people tend to say like someday a lot, or one day, like when I do this. Like you need to balance your long-term plans with short-term joys. Like schedule small, meaningful stuff in your life. I think generally it's safe to say that daydreaming as a whole, a lot more than you usually do, so fantasizing about stuff, being in another universe in your head, is probably a good sign that you don't like the universe you're in. The same goes for if you find yourself gaming a lot more than normal, or reading a lot more than normal, doing anything that involves another world or another universe that you are sucking yourself into every day, which is fine, not in like a casual sense, but like if you crave it and you are lost in it entirely and you're finding yourself addicted to smut or fantasy novels, you can't stand being outside of the book. It's maybe not just a hobby that you found, and it's actually a frustration in your current reality. And so, speaking of frustrations, my next one is generally feeling frustrated by everything and anything. And this might seem obvious, but I mean the stupid stuff, like your partner leaving their underpants on the floor. This is hard because in the moment, watching this video, you're going to say, oh yeah, like obviously. But when it's happening, you're so convinced it's the thing that you're annoyed about, then it's not the fact your life is just very much needing a change, and that could involve your routine, hanging out with people that are more similar to you or aligned to you. Like maybe you need more fun people in your life, maybe you need a more fun job, maybe it's your partner, your home even, and actually your environment comes into the next one, because I feel like when you feel so separated to your external environment, so like the people around you, the kinds of things they talk about, the kinds of places that they go to or invite you to, or your work life, like your work routine, their ethics as a company, or like their values, if everything in your reality just seems so out of line to you that you're this almost oddball puzzle piece that just doesn't click with any of it, you've likely outgrown the life that you've signed yourself up for, that you put into place. And that's fine. There's absolute no guilt with that. We change so much as people, and this is why it's so hard to keep a partner in your life, because not only are you changing, they are also changing, and so that could either go in that direction or even together in this direction. It could go all like it's a lot to expect someone's values and traits and personality and wants and needs to stay the same. So your ideas of like a perfect home is going to change, a perfect job's going to change, like hobbies, they can just dry out over time, and that's fine. I would argue that to find out what it is you've outgrown the most, see what it is that triggers you the most and kind of pisses you off and irks you off. If you find yourself seeing stuff that your friends are saying in a group chat, or like scrolling through posts that one of your mates is like always posting about, and you're just like, oh, I think when it comes to others as well in your social circles, it's time for a change when you find that their way of thinking and talking is like out of date to where you want to be. So even if you do find yourself wanting to spend like every evening at the pub to hang out with friends because that's what you've always done and you enjoy it, but you want to make that change for one reason or another, you're like, this isn't for me, I want to, but they're kind of holding me back. That's your old timeline, that's your old choice. So they were old friends that felt right to what you needed then, and that's cool. But you're gonna need to find people that think the way you want to start shifting your own thinking patterns and habits too, to kind of get yourself on that different timeline. Like in the same way as if you want to start embracing change and newness and trying new things and getting out of your comfort zone, then hanging out with people that have had the same job for 20 years, aren't very spontaneous and don't get excited by change isn't going to help. And it's fine to keep them in your life, but like to really invite that energy in, you're going to have to find areas in your control that will probably help encourage you and rub off on you in a positive way. And this again goes into my next one of just feeling uninspired, unexcited by things that you're usually excited about, like conversations. Certain people's energy just doesn't suit anymore, or like a hobby, a passion you used to really love, you just can't get lost into anymore. You're hyper aware of the time when you're doing the things that usually make you forget about time. If you want a fresh start, you don't really know what it is you should try, start by looking at the areas which you literally lose time to. I don't know, maybe just spending the evening researching something is exciting to you and you lose hours when you do it. But if there isn't anything, what's the first thing you can think of that you've never tried before? Have a little go. Shake things up a little bit, try something new. And I feel like a more obvious version of that would be if you just find yourself daydreaming about a different kind of life, having a different kind of job or a different kind of partner, like if you're fantasizing about a different kind of partner. Or visualizing yourself like presenting at work, like being in charge or something. You know, what are your what ifs? What do you regularly find yourself saying? Imagine that, or imagine this. I know I'm going a little bit back to mortality and the idea of time and aging, but I think fixating on your age and your goals and having a bit of tension and stress around that often happens, like I said earlier, when you're not distracted by your goals and your purpose. It's in us to be purposeful. You know, it's in everything. An ant knows what its purpose is and what it's here to do, and it sets itself in that mission. If we don't have that mission, if we're feeling directionless, and if we're not fulfilling our own as human beings, it puts a hyper focus in on just ourselves, nothing but ourselves, and can create a sense of pending doom. So if you find yourself feeling that sense of dread, often it's because there's not a lot of focus outward and expansion into something bigger, like your community, volunteering, your children, God, serving in a way that doesn't just help yourself, because self-satisfaction will just leave you walking around in circles and you'll never feel fulfilled, and therefore depression is very likely the result. Jealousy is a massive one, probably one of the most easiest to pinpoint. Jealousy was one of the first emotions I ever experienced, which helped me understand that emotions are communicators. So it was the first time I actually looked at an emotion in the face and been like, oh, I'm experiencing jealousy. A bit like Inside Out. Great films, by the way. Instead of just getting like pissed off or angry, I could swallow that pill and just be like, look, let's just face the facts here. This emotion's telling me something. It's communicating something. Oh, I haven't tended to my own dreams. That person's doing something I clearly really care about. So why don't I put some energy that I'm mustering up for jealousy into that passion as well, so I can get closer like that person's getting closer. So if you're getting triggered by people making moves to new cities or getting a new job or having a baby or buying a new house, then it's probably a good sign that you're needing a fresh start. You've been flogging a dead horse, or you're tending to dreams that are like from 2 years ago. Like, is it the person's courage? Is it their freedom? Is it their ability to take risks? What is it about them that's causing that jealousy? I feel like as well, when people celebrate old wins all the time and they speak about successes they had many years ago, you've probably met someone who always talks about the same thing they achieved ages and ages ago, and you're like, yeah, like, you don't want to do it on yourself. So if you recognize that dreamy romanticization of old successes, your body's basically yearning for some new ones. Like, what made those successes so meaningful? Is it because you tried something new? Is it because you had new connections then? New things to be excited about? Maybe it was like a personal growth story. And I know I say it a lot, but our environment is a reflection. It's a mirror of what's going on in here. So if you're seeing a lot of turmoil, tragedy, frustration, anger, try and do what not a lot of people are willing to do and figure out where that comes from within. Instead of pointing and saying, oh, well, they got pissed off. 1, 2, 3. fingers are pointing back, as the saying goes. Where do I find that in myself? Why have I attracted that kind of person into my life? What does that mean in how I feel in my own relationship with anger? That's a really hard one to come to terms with, to be honest, because the last thing we want to do when we see something that triggers us and confuses us, like we don't understand why someone can live that way, is to find it within us. It's like, oh, I've brought that in, have I? Okay. Another one that I'm really used to is being stuck in the mind of others. When you're talking to someone, if you're constantly thinking about what their reaction and feelings might be towards the conversation you're having, if you're in other people's heads a lot of the time, you're probably living by others' expectations. Understanding firstly what your own expectations are of your own life is a good start, and then you can start making new objectives, new goals. If you typically find yourself fall back into the trap of trying to please others, worrying about how others think of you, that's a whole journey in itself, and that's one I had to go on. But I didn't really realize at the time that I was not only just generally socially anxious and concerned about what people thought about me, I was also setting some goals on the back of what I thought others would think was cool if I achieved, which is wild, really. And of course, leaving the obvious more to last. An inner knowing, a gut instinct, a feeling, a thought. The very fact that you've clicked on this video today from seeing the title, to me, I feel like says enough, honestly. Sometimes we might need reasons to back up that thought, but in taking that leap, in trusting that knowing, just reinforces self-trust and an ability to actually do the freaking thing. And that's all this is going to give you. It's just going to give you more self-reliance and confidence, more of a self-belief system that supports the idea of you always knowing what it is that you want and your ability to achieve that. I'm going to leave this here because I've waffled my little brain off. If you've got any to leave yourself, like if you think I've missed something out, please have a conversation down there in the comments. Let me know if you found this useful. If you didn't know, I'm a tarot reader, and if you want me to do your tarot cards, I will leave my calendar down there. If you're from the UK, I'm looking to do tarot parties as well, so let me know where you're from and if you're interested. I'm on social media such as Instagram and Facebook, so join me on all those. I'll leave my socials down there. Best of luck for all your fresh starts and new beginnings, and I'll see you next time. Bye!